We first went out to Tanzania in February 2003. We'd been asked out by Jeff and Laurie Hobby, who have been out in Africa for about 12 years, and they took us to various projects that they'd been helping with. And one of those projects was the village of Mnase. And so Rebecca and I, my wife, went out there and just hung out with the people in the village to learn from them, to hear their music and their storytelling. Our first impressions was of great hospitality and welcome, which really surprised us, because as we'd been driving to the village, we drove through empty riverbeds and there seemed very little water. And we also noticed that the crop of maize that we'd heard so much about was devastated. It was dying and withering away. And so during those first few days, we actually got to learn more and more of the reality of their life and the fact that their future was not looking very good, because we were right, the crop was dying and that there was no rain whatsoever. In times of need like this, there's only one food that they know will be around, and that's a thing called umbago, which is like a weed, really. And they take the leaves from this weed and they stew it up and it becomes this green, horrible slime. And that's really the staple diet in bad times. And often that's fed to the children anyway during these days. And I heard one story about when it really is dire, the older people of the village will actually go into their mud huts and just shut the door and not come out. Their thinking is, if there is any food at all, just a little of food, then it should go to the young who've still got a life to lead. For them, they've led their lives, and so they're actually giving their life up for the young. It was a very humbling time, brought up many emotions, especially coming from the West where we see so much. When we got home, we thought very much about the village. Our hope and prayer was that the rains would come late, because there was still a possibility that the rains could come. But as the weeks and months passed, we heard that they hadn't come. So we knew that short term there was going to be a problem in the village. So it made us ask the question, what could we possibly help? And out of that question, we started saving a little bit of money towards that. And we were able to save enough to send a truckload of maize out to the village. The long-term plan was to help them tell the story to the West. Coming from a background of music and producing, and my wife being a storyteller, we really thought it would be fantastic if we could actually capture their story of hope in adversity through music, story and photos, and then bring that back and sell it in the West, and the money that we generated from those sales we could plough back into the village in order to build wells. The most important thing out there is water. There is a huge water shortage. You know, even in a good year, we've heard that they have to walk 2 kilometres just to get water. It's one thing getting a vision and an idea, it's a total another thing to actually put it into process. And to be quite honest, it was a little bit of a step of faith for me and for Rebecca. At the time, although my background is music, I had no recording equipment or anything, so I was putting this idea out there thinking, where on earth am I going to get this from? But amazingly, it all came together, and we ended up in 2005, April 2005, flying across with a little small studio in a box, and being able to go out there and put this process in action. We decided to ask the village through the chairman and the elders if this was something that they thought might be a good idea for them. Again, often the West, we get a good idea and we think we need to put it into practice. But I wanted really to partner with the people. So we asked them and they were really excited about this idea. So we sent out memos to actually tell them just our rough plans. But obviously I hadn't really a clue what to expect. So it was really a blank sheet of paper when we got out there, and it was a matter of stepping out just to see what possibilities were out there. So when we got out in 2005 To be quite honest, we didn't know what to expect. But when we got there, we certainly knew there was a buzz in the village for a couple of reasons. One, because of the effect that the food had had in 2003. And secondly, because the chairman had spoken to all the village about this idea of telling their story. And so on the second day when we got there, they arranged a welcome party, I suppose. And we gathered in the centre of the village, and school had been given a day off, and the whole village gathered, and we could hear the musicians coming through the maize field from their different compounds as everyone came together. And then there was speeches and formal welcomes, and the whole village gathered in a ring, and each group of musicians came in turn and did a presentation before us of the songs that they were hoping that we would use. You have to remember that this is a very primitive village, so electricity and modern recording studios are nowhere to be seen. So we had a very portable, battery-operated system, and we just literally had to walk from place to place, carrying their stuff, finding places out of the wind and noises of animals and children. I had a book of traditional instruments that I would take around and point to the older people in the village and say, have you seen one of these? And they would think about and chat about. And I remember one time there was one instrument I pointed to, and this woman got very excited and she said, yes, there's a man around the corner who plays this. Well, an hour and a half later, we've walked right into the middle of the bush, and we pull in between these maize fields, and there's this little old man there playing this musical bow called a donondo, and it was just, it was like being in National Geographic, and we had a wonderful time with him and his family, and ended up the next day him coming and recording that sound. Every 3 or 4 days we would have to drive out of the village to find a place where there was electricity to charge up all the batteries. And on one of these occasions, as we're driving out, there's a big commotion on the side of the road, and lots of people start running towards the car shouting emergency. So we're wondering what's happening, and we stopped and asked some questions, only to find out that there was someone that was really ill. Well, we backed the truck up into the maize field and found a woman there who was pregnant with about her, I don't know, 7th, 8th, 9th child, and she just couldn't deliver it. So we dumped her into the back of the truck and sped off towards the nearest city. Now, the hospital was about an hour and a half away from there. And when we arrived there, fortunately, we got her there safely, and they managed to deliver the baby. But the nurses told us that if we hadn't have been passing by, no one passes by in that region with a car, and she would have died and lost the baby. Well, the family was so thankful for us that they have actually now named the child after the driver. So in that small village, there is a little black boy running around with the name of Jeff Hobby. The day after the celebrations, we were sitting talking story in the compound when a guy walks in with a goat in his arms, and after a few questions we realised that this goat was for us. The chairman and the elders had got together and decided they wanted to give us a special gift. Now, in their culture, to be given a chicken is a huge honour. So to be given a goat, one guy explained it to me, it was almost like being given gold. So we certainly had a realisation of, again, their great generosity and hospitality towards friends. So I thought, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if we could help build a well in their village, but using it from their story. So in other words, they get a feeling that they own it. Wouldn't it be great to be able to say to them, wow, it's your story and it's your music that the West have been so excited about that they've bought it, and that money has gone to building your well. So rather than it being an aid project where people just give to it, it's more about them helping themselves actually bring something to their village and being proud that their expression is understood and appreciated in another part of the world.